national interests and peripheral national interests. So core national interests are those national interests about which no compromise is possible. It is non-negotiable. So the core national interest is sovereignty, national unity and integrity, independence. So these are the core national interests. No nation can compromise with its national unity and integrity, cannot compromise with its sovereignty, cannot compromise with its national independence, because these are related to its survival. So survival of any species like state also is the prime concern. So core concerns are core national interest, no compromise policy. It is also called the realm of high politics. This core national interest comes into the category of high politics. And then there are peripheral national interests. Peripheral national interests are those interests where compromise is possible, where give and take is possible, where survival is not existing. Even peripheral national interests are also equally important. But at least here, give and take, exchange, some concession is possible. So the business, commerce, trade, all these things comes into the peripheral national interest. So here, as far as trade is concerned, business is concerned, commerce is concerned, so here in this area, various kinds of negotiations take place, some kind of concession is given, some kind of concession is also received in the process. So that, and this is also called the realm of low politics. So if first was the high politics, it is the realm of low politics. So any foreign policy aim at protecting, preserving, promoting national interests of a country. And that national interest must consist of both core national interests as well as peripheral. Or you can say high politics and low politics, the same. So all this is true about all foreign policies, including India's foreign policy. Now, there is another theoretical framework I will use, that is a structure and agency debate. Now, question arises: who shapes the national interest? Who makes the foreign policy? Who are the shaper of the foreign policy, maker of the foreign policy? Who determines the policy? So then there is one school of thought that says that actors are important. Actors means decision makers. Actors means Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, Foreign Services, and all those people who have stake in these things. So they are actors. So one school of thought says that it is the actors who determine the foreign policy of a country. And so we are familiar with the Nehru's foreign policy, Indira Gandhi's foreign policy, Morarji Desai's foreign policy, and Gujarat foreign policy. Now Manmohan Singh's foreign policy and Modi's foreign policy. One of my students, Dipani Dwivedi, is working on only Modi's foreign policy. So here the role of actor, role of decision makers becomes important. So if you are analyzing, studying, looking at the foreign policy from this perspective, the role of personality, the role of actor, then in this way also the foreign policy is studied. So you find contrast, the difference. It is said that Nehru's foreign policy was characterized by ideology. He was idealist. He was not hardcore realist, and that is why at many times he surrendered our national interests also. Because it is said that John Foster Dulles, Foreign Secretary of State, called Nehru and asked him that, okay, America is ready to support India's candidature for permanent membership of the Security Council. Because China has become a communist country, and the so-called nationalist China, that is Taiwan, is a very small country, a tiny country. Communist China was not even given the membership of the United Nations, and it looks very awkward that a small country like Taiwan is holding the veto power, is permanent member of the Security Council. So he said that in place of Taiwan, in place of nationalist China, because communist China was this main China, and the nationalist China was this Taiwan. So he said that India agrees. So we can raise this issue in United Nations, and at that time United Nations was dominated by the America and its supporters. So this permanent membership can be given to India, but Nehru immediately said no. We will be very happy to be the permanent member of the Security Council, but not at the cost of our neighbor, good neighbor, brother, China. Because at that time we were talking about Hindi, Chini, Bhai Bhai. So how we can stab in the back of our Bhai just to get the permanent membership of the Security Council? So he said no. He said okay, permanent membership is acceptable, but not at the cost of China. Make another seat for us, we'll be happy. But that was not possible anyway. So this is in the debate, but it is questionable. Many have said no. John Foster Dulles never made this offer. Many say no, this offer was made. So it's very difficult to say, because if any conversation which has not been recorded here, so how you can say? And John Foster Dulles is not here, and Nehru is not here, because it was a conversation, telephonic conversation, which was not recorded here. So how you can prove it? It's difficult. But anyway, but this shows, this example I am giving because this shows the idealism of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. So it is said that in one word it is said that Jawaharlal Nehru, who is said to be the architect of India's foreign policy, because Nehru never made any foreign minister. As long he was the prime minister, he was his own foreign minister. During Nehru's prime ministership, no foreign minister was appointed. So he was his own foreign minister. And even in the Congress time also, when before independence, it was Nehru who was conceptualizing, who was articulating the foreign policy of India. And he also represented the Congress party, the nation, etc. in various global conferences where India was invited. So Nehru was on the face, and Nehru is also said to be not only the architect of modern India, he is also the architect of foreign policy. Then it is said Indira Gandhi, she was hardcore realistic, and for her this idealism was not a constraint. And you know that how the Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi, she joined hand with the Soviet Union, ensured that Pakistan is dismembered, Pakistan is divided into two countries, and Pakistan is weakened for once and all, because as long as both the Pakistans were united, so Pakistan was always thinking of itself to be a challenger of India. And the population taken together of both the Pakistan and territory, etc., even then it was less than India. But even then, they were significant forces. And sometimes the population and territory is not so important as Israel has proved. If you see the population and territory, so our world is much larger in terms of population as well as the territory. But even then, when the confrontation has taken place, it has been Israel which has always prevailed rather than the Arab world. So don't go by this population size and territory, etc. So by that logic, Pakistan itself was a challenger to India's power in South Asia and in this region. But after the dismemberment, after the bifurcation of Pakistan, even Pakistani people themselves realized, the leadership realized, the world also realized that now there is no competition between India and Pakistan. India's power can't be restrained, can't be checked. India is far ahead of Pakistan. And Henry Kissinger, who was a great critic of India, who sided with Pakistan during Bangladesh war, who was also instrumental in sending 7th enterprises that was a naval fleet to threaten India during the course of the Bangladesh war, the Pakistan war, Bangladesh. So Kissinger himself said after the creation of Bangladesh that India is now a preeminent power of South Asia. This is the word used by Henry Kissinger. So Henry Kissinger, Kissinger himself was a hardcore realist. So he said that no, you have to accept this India's preeminent position in the South Asian subcontinent. So in the same way, you have the Gujarat doctrine also, and you have this actor thing. I will be concluding. Manmohan Singh. Manmohan Singh, his imprint was also there on foreign policy, and Manmohan Singh foreign policy was not that much robust foreign policy, muscular foreign policy. That is said about Modi's foreign policy. So Modi is known for his muscular foreign policy, the robust foreign policy. It's a strong response whenever anything has happened. So Modi has responded very strongly. So the point I am making here, again I will come to this. So if you are going by the actor structure debate, so here actors becomes important factor in the determination in the making of the foreign policy. These are just examples I have given. So, and in actors not necessarily prime minister here, even foreign minister. When Gujarat doctrine came, Indra Kumar Gujarat was foreign minister only. He was not prime minister. Later on he became prime minister. But when his Gujarat doctrine came, so he was a foreign minister only, and unilateral concession to him. And he said India should be generous, India should be magnanimous, India should give a lot of space to its neighbor, and India should discard this principle of reciprocity, because in foreign policy, in diplomacy, etc., the principles of reciprocity is usually invoked here. So he said, okay, we are discarding the principles of reciprocity, unilateral concession to our neighbors, because we have to win over their goodwill. And after all, they were also in comparison to power. So there was this asymmetry was very vast. India was too large, too big, too powerful, and these neighbors were too small, and they were not in position. So the system that India can afford to say the generosity towards the neighbors. So as far as actor is concerned, so actor doesn't mean he has to be the prime minister. The actor can be the foreign minister also, as in Indian foreign policy, Gujarat doctrine minister, Gujarat was a foreign minister. So if any foreign policy, even in American foreign policy also, more than Nixon, it was Kissinger who was shaping the foreign policy of America. And Kissinger initially was the national security advisor to Nixon government, and later on he became the foreign secretary, they call foreign minister now. So here sometimes Kissinger was playing a leading role in the formulation, articulation of American foreign policy rather than the President Nixon. So when I say the actor, so actor doesn't mean all the time only head of the state, head of the government. It can be foreign minister, it can be national secretary, anyone who is calling the shot, who is determining the foreign policy, actor. And then again in the foreign policy making also, it is not the work of only one person. It is sometimes it is being articulated by one person through statement, etc. But behind the scene, your team is working. So a lot of people are there. Foreign minister is there, foreign secretary is there, foreign services, Indian foreign services people are there. So a lot of people are there. So here in the structure agency debate, so far this act. Now I am coming to this structure. And here, this structure agency debate, you can bring in another theoretical framework, this realist theory. This realism in international relations, we all know there are two kinds of realism. One is classical realism, and another is a neo-realism that is also called structural realism. So in the classical realism, that is also called inside-out approach, and this says that that foreign policy is the extension of domestic policy. So foreign policy is the extension of domestic policy. The domestic factor, domestic environment determines shape the foreign policy of a country. And here, this classical realism that has been articulated in theory by Hans Bergenthal, he has given 6 principles, but first principle is most important, and that says that this foreign policy is determined by certain objective laws, and those objective laws are rooted in the human nature. He has not used the foreign policy, he used the international politics, but I am paraphrasing it. He has used the international politics determined by certain objective laws which is rooted in the human nature. Here just I am paraphrasing the international politics by foreign policy, because foreign policy is also part of international politics. That foreign policy is determined by certain objective laws, and these objective laws are rooted in the human nature. Means human nature is the predominant force. So it is the human nature which determines the foreign policy. Again the actor. So he focuses on the role of actor. And then again it is mentioned that foreign policy is the extension of domestic policy. So here this one thought is there. Now the second is, and that comes into the actor. The structure is coming to the picture. So structure, the neo-realists, they talk about the structure. So by structure they mean that external environment rather than the domestic politics. It is the international politics, and they say that domestic politics is characterized by hierarchy. By hierarchy they mean you have a set of government from bottom to the top. So that is hierarchy. Bottom to the top, there are from the police constable to the home minister, you have a hierarchy. From a patwari at the village level, you have chief secretary and cabinet secretary, etc. That is hierarchy. So in the domestic politics, set rules are there, hierarchy is there. So if any rules are being violated, etc., it has the mechanism to deal with this thing. So this is the so in domestic politics is characterized by hierarchy, and this hierarchy, the authority is constituted in hierarchy. And this the international politics is characterized by anarchy. So anarchy doesn't mean jungle raj. Anarchy doesn't mean jungle rules. Anarchy simply means absence of authority at the international level. So at international level, there is no authority as you have in the national politics, the domestic politics. So at the international level, and they call it, Kenneth Ball and others who subscribe to this structure, they call it anarchy. So anarchy means absence of authority at the global level, at the international level. There is no word state, and there is no word government. There is no international law, and there is no international mechanism which can ensure compliance to the rules, regulations prevailing at the international level. So now, since the international scenario is characterized by anarchy, and in this anarchy, you see, there's another concepts come that certain powers are more important, and certain are less important, and certain are insignificant. They don't matter much. So then they come to this thing that global order, international order is always determined by the distribution of power in the international system. And this distribution of power is not even in the international system. It is highly uneven. Some have more power, some have less, and some have almost insignificant power. So on that basis, they say there are great powers, there are middle powers, and there are small powers. And they use the word capabilities because Kenneth Wall, instead of using the word power, uses the word capability. But you can use it as an interchangeable term, the power and capability. And they say that it is this capability can be measured, it can be quantified. So on the basis of the distribution of power, the shape of the global order is determined. If concentration of power or capability is at one point, then global order will be unipolar order. And if the concentration of power or capability has a two pole, then it will be the bipolar world order. And if concentration of power is at more than 2 points, then it will be a multipolar world order. But even in the case of multipolarity also, the number of power will not be in 2 digits. It will always be in the single digit. Because the number of great power can always be counted on the finger. Finger means 10. So it has to be single digit. So even in the multipolar world, doesn't mean that more than 100 becomes a great power. No, it is never the case. They are always in single digit. The number of great powers in any international system, in any international order, world order, global order, can always be counted. So, and then with this, so there are different poles. There is concept of polarity is also there. So polarity is created with the concentration of power. Pole means concentration of power. At which point the power has been concentrated. So in this way, on the basis of distribution of power, you have unipolar world, you have bipolar world, you have multipolar world. These are the 3 scenarios. Now, the foreign policy of a country depends upon the nature of the global order, the nature of the world order, international system. So, if there is a unipolar world, so foreign policy will be a different kind. If it is a bipolar world, the foreign policy will be of a different kind. If it is a multipolar world, again foreign policy will be different. Just giving you, I will give you example. During Cold War period, the foreign policy of all countries, including our own country, India, was different. Because every country had the option of switching over from this superpower to other superpower. Then there is another difference between superpower and great powers. Superpowers are only those powers who have the capability to project its power anywhere in the world, including the outer space also. Because now the future one will be the space one. So the country which has the capability, which has the capacity to project its power in no time, anywhere in this world, on this planet and in the outer space also, only that power can be called superpower. And this superpower in the world history has been only 2 countries so far. One is the United States of America, another was Soviet Union. Now Soviet Union is not there. Because America has the power to project its power anywhere in the world, any ocean, any continent, even outer space also. So this capability is right now with the America only. And that is why we are saying it's a unipolar world. Now, during Cold War period, Soviet Union was having the matching capability. Even as we all know, Soviet Union reached space before America. In 56, Sputnik was launched and Yuri Gagarin was the first human being to go to the space. And he was Russian, Soviet Union. So even Soviet Union was matching America in all the field, and Soviet Union had its power to project its power anywhere. Soviet Union had satellites also, close allies also. Cuba was the next door neighbor of America. Not only Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, many countries they were also closely aligned to Soviet Union. Many African countries were with Soviet Union. Asian countries were with Soviet Union. And Soviet Union had its bases everywhere in the world. So Soviet Union had the power, capability to project its power anywhere in the world. So, but this is the situation in the Cold War period. Since world was bipolar, so India had the option of joining hand with this superpower or that superpower. We all know during the Indo-China War, the Sino-Indian War of 1962, India first approached America, and even America promised to help India. But in the meantime, China declared the ceasefire. So the American assistance became, there was no need was there. But later on, when India for modernization of its forces approached America, so America was not very helpful. Then for the modernization of its forces, India has the option to approach Soviet Union, and Soviet Union was more cooperative. And in this way, gradually, India kept on getting closer to the Soviet Union. But this was possible because the world was bipolar. India had the option to join America. If America help is not coming, then it can move to Soviet Union. It happened with India, it happened with many other countries also. Egypt was closer to America. Then Egypt, there are some differences with America. Then Egypt moved to Soviet Union. And the Aswan Dam in Egypt was built by Soviet Union. Then again, because of some reasons, Egypt again shifted towards America. So Egypt first pro-America, then pro-Soviet Union, then again. So this was happening with the many countries. They kept on changing their side. China itself was the close ally of Soviet Union. Later on, they became the close ally of the United States of America. The point I am making here, the foreign policy of all the nations is determined, shaped by the international structure, international order. So structural constraints becomes important. So the point I am making, whoever is holding the power, whoever is holding the position, that becomes insignificant. Because it is the international structure, it is the international system, the systemic constraint, structural constraint, they will determine the foreign policy behavior of the country. So here, role of actor is reduced. Take the example of India's foreign policy. So during Cold War, earlier pro-Soviet Union, because Stalin, when India got independence, Stalin said that Nehru, Gandhi, this Congress party itself, the bourgeois party, they are hand in glove with the bourgeois, they are protecting the interest of bourgeois. Even Stalin went to this extent of saying this thing, that Indian democracy is a fake democracy, etc. And he was saying that Nehru is in hand in glove with Great Britain and with the United States of America. And they also said this thing, that India deciding to continue with the membership of the Commonwealth, because its name was British Commonwealth. It was representing British Empire, and India only put this demand that if you remove the word British, you will be member of the Commonwealth. So that is Commonwealth, membership of the Commonwealth, prove this thing that they are with America, with Great Britain, etc. So Stalin was great critic. He has no faith in Nehru, etc. But later on, we all know that we became very close to Soviet Union. So important thing is here that India had this option of changing the sides during Cold War. So, but when the unipolar world came, when the Soviet Union disintegrated, India lost this option here. Now India was left with no options. You have to develop, cultivate good relations with the sole superpower, only superpower, United States of America. And you look at the foreign policy of India in the post-Cold War world, in the post-bipolar world, you will find that all Indian leaders are getting closer to the United States of America. And Vajpayee went to the extent of saying this thing, that America is our natural ally. And Manmohan Singh went to the extent of threatening this thing, that will sacrifice the government, but we will not compromise with the Indo-US nuclear deal. And eventually, he said that he will leave the prime ministership if this deal is not clinched. And eventually, the deal was negotiated, was signed. So now, because now India, and for that matter all countries, they have no option but to be on good terms with the United States of America. I am illustrating this point by giving you one example, the Kargil War. When Kargil happened in 1998, when Kargil happened in 1998, it was a unipolar world. So both India and Pakistan were reporting to Clinton, and both were getting order from Clinton. Vajpayee was complaining to Clinton that Musharraf is doing this, Pakistan is doing that, Nawaz Sharif is doing that, Nawaz Sharif has. So all the complaints Vajpayee took to the Clinton, and the Pakistan did the same. The Nawaz Sharif, Pervez Musharraf, because Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister at that time, Pervez Musharraf was military chief, and in fact Pervez Musharraf was calling the shot. So this, in the same Darbar, India was also approaching the same Darbar, and Pakistan was also approaching the same Darbar because the world was unipolar. During Bangladesh crisis, India was not on talking terms with America, and Pakistan was not on talking terms with Soviet Union. Soviet Union was solidly behind India, and America was solidly behind Pakistan, but that kind of thing was not there. And it was an incident which happened after 20-25 years, because Bangladesh was in 71 and this Kargil happened 98. Within this period, the international politics has changed, the global order has changed. So the structural constraint, the systemic constraint, they have changed, because at that time we were working under different constraint, and now we are working under different constraint. So since it was unipolar world, both the parties, India as well as Pakistan, were approaching the America. And you know this thing that India suffered casualty because Indian Air Force demanded permission from the Vajpayee government allow us to violate the actual line of control. But since there is pressure from America that respect actual line of control, don't violate it, because of this American sensitivity, because of American dictate, etc., Vajpayee government did not give permission to Indian Air Force to violate the line of actual control, and because of that, India suffered casualties. Because the same, India was also saying that they are respecting line of actual control. Pakistan was also saying that they are respecting line of actual control. Then who are these people? Pakistan was saying, I don't know, they are Kashmiri freedom fighters, they call them freedom fighters. They are local Kashmiri people, we have nothing to do. Even when Pakistani soldiers died, Pakistan refused to take their dead bodies because they said they are infiltrated, they are not Pakistani army people, etc. So they were saying that this is the India's internal problem. These are the, they don't call them terrorists, we call them terrorists, they call them freedom fighters. So they say that they are Kashmiri militants, and India was saying that they are regular Pakistani army people. But both the countries are making this claim to Clinton, to America, that we are respecting line of actual control. We have not violated it, we have not gone to other side. So the point I am making here, it was unipolar world, so that is why India and Pakistan were compelled to formulate and articulate their foreign policy keeping this factor in mind. Now, it is being argued in international politics, the world is again changing, because the world never is fixed. The world is always changing. In the word of Heraclitus, we can say, as Heraclitus has said, that you can't step twice in the same river, because by the time you are taking another step, another water has come. So in the same way as Heraclitus says that you can't step twice in the same river, it is constantly changing. In the same way, the world is also constantly changing. So this unipolarity, whether America remains to be unipolar, it's difficult to say, because China is gradually emerging also. So that is why you can see the shift in the foreign policy posture of many countries. So now many countries are not taking that much seriously the America's thing, because they have one option of approaching China, etc. So in the agent structure debate, going back to my own argument, there is one school of thought which said that the actors which determines the foreign policy behavior of the state. There are another group who say that actors are insignificant. The policy towards a country can't be changed because of the change of the foreign policy, foreign secretary, foreign minister and prime minister. So in the structure agency debate, one says that it is the structure, global structure, international system that matters in the formulation and articulation of foreign policy. Then another school of thought says no, it is the person, actor, and it has. So I have given you in the meantime the classical realism, the structural realism, etc. And foreign policy is always characterized by continuity and change. There is always change and there is always continuity. If you see India's strategic thinking, India's strategic policy, so Lord Curzon more than 100 years back, I think in 1900 something, he has drawn the strategic line, strategic frontier of this country, and that strategic line drawn by Lord Curzon is still relevant. Our strategic thinker still think the same Lord Curzon's way that if India has to be defended, so our defense has to be from here. So that has not changed. And so there is a not radical change in the foreign policy. So foreign policy is always characterized by continuity and is also characterized by change. Then there are many principles how we can forget on Kautilya. Kautilya says that Mandela theory, that your enemy is friend and the immediate neighbors can't be your friend. In Mandela theory, your immediate neighbors can't be your friend. By applying the same logic, you can say that none of our neighbors can be a true friend because going by the Mandela theory. But enemy is your friend. By this, using the same logic, Pakistan has befriended China because India's enemy, Pakistan, and that is Pakistan is friend of China. India's enemy, China, and so enemy is friend of Pakistan. Now Pakistan and China, their friendship is so strong that one Pakistani diplomat has said that India and Pakistan-China relation is taller than mountains Himalaya, deeper than ocean, and sweeter than honey. So this kind of relationship with China has with Pakistan, and they call it all-weather friends. So it's all-weather friends. So China, so here Mandela theory also becomes relevant. So enemy is enemy, and not only about India, even the Caribbean countries, the small Caribbean countries, they are neighbor of America. The same thing they say that this is their misfortune that history, geography has made them the neighbor of America. Since they are neighbor of America, America doesn't listen. They have to listen America only. So by applying this Mandela theory given by Chanakya, you can also try to decipher, understand the foreign policy of that's very relevant. Now Vietnam is enemy of China. Now India Vietnam is good friends. India Vietnam they have very close relation. Philippines is the enemy of China. Philippines has become good friend. Only yesterday we have given the one BrahMos का जो पूरा काफी खेप उनको पहुंचा दिया गया because you can't give BrahMos to China, but happily giving it to Philippines because Philippines and America relations are stranded. So here this structure agency debate you can use for understanding the foreign policy of any country, and that applies to India also. And there are two more theories I will use, and then I will find it because it will take a lot of time. Foreign policies, there is another theoretical framework, international liberalism. So international liberalism talks about harmony, talks about cooperation, because realism talks about conflict, rivalry, competition, the geopolitical rivalry. But this liberalism is a rival theory, and liberalism, instead of looking at the conflict, look at the cooperation. And both have their basic premises are different, because realism is based on Hobbesian description of human nature, and you know Hobbesian description of human nature, the man seeks power and his desire for power ceases only with his death. But here liberalism is based on Lockean concept of human nature, and he says that man has love, affection, goodwill, cooperation towards his fellow being. So primarily human being is good. So this realism based on Hobbesian description of human nature, liberalism based on Lockean description of human nature, and here they focus on the positive aspect of the human nature, the cooperation, etc. And in international relation, this liberalism has been developed in many theories. The most important theory is the theory of complex interdependence. The complex interdependence, this theory has been developed by Robert Kuhn, Joseph Ney, etc. So in complex interdependence, and this is also called Coburg model of world politics, and this realist is called this billiard ball model of world politics. So it's Coburg model of world politics. So here all are intertwined. So all are so interdependent here. So they can't be separated. So in this interdependent world, now the globalized world, so they say that there is just scope for cooperation, and they talk about the theory of absolute gain. So theory of absolute gain means if you are cooperating, if the nations are cooperating, everybody will be the winner. No one is loser. So the liberals talk about the absolute gain, where everyone is gainer. It's true, someone is gaining more, someone is gaining less, but everybody is gaining. Everybody is gainer, everybody is winner, and no one is loser in this cooperation. This is realism. This is liberalism. But realists talk about the relative gain. So the relative gain argument say that who is gaining how much? If your enemy is gaining more and you are gaining less, then no cooperation. Because we cannot allow our enemy to gain more and we are getting less. And that is why at the last moment India said nothing doing, we will not be part of RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. You must have heard it. India was part of the negotiation. But when India realized that we will be gaining little and China will be gaining more, so why we should allow China to gain more? If India would have adopted this liberal argument of absolute gain, where China is gaining, India is gaining, so then India would have become part of it. But India relied on this realist perspective of relative gain, where China's more gain is not acceptable to India. So then India said, okay, we are coming out of RCEP, they did not. So here, so cooperation is also there. If you look at the foreign policy, also India's foreign policy, often we talk about China. You will be surprised to see this India-China cooperation. In fact, conflict is very little, the cooperation is more. 2 years, 3 years back, 90% of the students were having the Chinese cell phone in their pocket. Now I think things have changed. Now India is exporting that. But 5-6 years back, all the cell phones were by China only. You see the value of trade between India and China. It's a more than $100 billion trade. And you all know that trade happens only when your interest is there. Because if you are not gaining, you will not enter into any commercial contract. If your enemy is selling something cheaper and your friend is selling the same product at the higher rate, you will buy from your enemy rather than buying it from friend, because the friend is cheating, charging more. The same thing is happening with India. If India has to buy from America or Europe, India has to pay more. But if India is buying from China, they have to pay less. So we hate them, we abuse them, but we buy from them because it is cheap. I am just giving one example. During Manmohan Singh time, because of national security concern, the telecom companies, because telecom was coming up at that time, and the power companies, they were procuring their equipments, power equipments and telecom equipments from China. But then national security issue was there, then Manmohan Singh government issued directives to all the corporate houses, etc. because this telecom sector was evolving and the power sector was evolving under the private sector. Says that don't procure your equipment from Chinese source, procure it from other than Chinese. Other than means if not China, then Europe and America. Then Indian corporate houses, they came with this argument and convinced the government of India, you can't do that. If you are denying the Chinese equipment and if you are forcing us to buy European and American equipments, then we can't give the cheaper dollar rate to the consumers. We can't give power at a cheaper rate to the consumer. We will raise the power tariff, we will raise the call rates. Then government of India said, मनमोहन सिंह गवर्नमेंट नहीं भैया, बिजली सस्ता रखो, टेलीफोन लोगों को सस्ते में दो, कॉल रेट मत बढ़ाओ, इलेक्शन भी लड़ना है और जहाँ से मर्जी हो वहाँ से करें. So then eventually this Chinese import of telecom equipment, power equipment continued. So the point I am making here, India and China, and there are many institutional liberalism, institutional liberalism. If you apply this institutional liberalism, then India and China, they are part of trilateral framework, Russia, India, China. They are part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization is also called Asian NATO. It is a defense organization, not a business commercial thing. India is part of that. India is part of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Now it has been expanded further. India is part of BASICS, Brazil, India, China. The basic acronym was coined in Denmark, this UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. When climate issues involved, India and China are the same page. When multilateral trade issue is there, then India and China are the same page. When the restructuring of the Bretton Woods institution is there, Bretton Woods institution with the IMF and World Bank, then India and China are at the same page, because both are demanding that non-European, non-American must have a greater say in IMF and World Bank. Then, despite not liking, India is part of ASEAN Infrastructure Investment Bank. India has taken huge loan from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. India is also part of New Democratic Bank of BRICS, and both are Chinese promoted. So if you see this cooperation between India and China, the same thing can be said about other countries also. So this word is so complex. So this Cohen and they say this is a complex interdependence because of various reasons. The word is so, there is a complex interdependence. So the common word is there, where this war is not possible, and that is why whenever India and China tension has escalated, eventually it has been brought down. Because other calculations comes into the picture. China also knows that in full-fledged war, India will be loser, China will be loser. And why China should lose this advantageous position? Because every year they are making $100 billion. The trade surplus, the trade deficit between India and China is now $100 billion. So why they will lose this lucrative trade with India? They are not gaining much from Pakistan. Pakistan is a kind of liability, but they are not making money from Pakistan, making money from India. The total cost of CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, earlier it was $40 million, now it has been raised to $60 million because of the cost overrun has been because of the period has increased. So even, and you see the China is making $100 billion from India trade. Means by using the trade surplus earned from India trade, can use it to finance not one but two CPEC every year. $100 million trade surplus, $60 million. So from 1 year profit they can fund two CPEC, China-Pakistan economic. So this was it. So the point of making this liberalism can also be used to explaining the foreign policy behavior of the country. Now trade, commerce, business in a globalized world, we are more concerned about it. Now we say that age of geopolitics is over. Now we have entered into the age of geoeconomics, your economic factors are more important and they are shaping the foreign policy behavior of the country. So I created a kind of confusion among all of you because I have been bringing in many theories here and there and then explaining the things. And finally, the social constructivism I will talk and conclude the talk because I have already exceeded the time given by Chancellor. She has given 30 minutes only and I think already approaching 1 hour here. So the social constructivism is the last theoretical framework I will talk and then conclude. Others are also there, word system is also there, Marxist theory is also there, but that I don't have time. So social constructivism, because it is one of the leading theory of international relation. That is why any discussions of international relation should not be treated as completed unless and until we are not talking about social constructivism. So social constructivism, they say here, the Alexander Welt is the main theoretician. He said that anarchy is what state make of it. For Kenneth Wall, anarchy is fixed, anarchy is given, anarchy is objective. But for constructivists, the social constructivists, because social constructivists are not supporter of objective theory, they talk about this subjective theory. Social constructivism are part of postmodernism. Social constructivists believe that there is no final truth, there is no objective truth. Any so-called truth is a relative truth determined by the time and space. So the concept of absolute truth, final truth, etc. is not there. In fact, any so-called truth is a relative truth, not absolute, depending upon time. And instead of being objective, it is a subjective. So here, anarchy, they say it is given, Kenneth Wall, here they said it is not given, but it is constructed. And in this construction, many subjective factors come into the picture. So the foreign policy depends upon the perception of the same anarchical world. When the foreign policy determined by the perception of the regional and global structure, and for Kenneth Wall, this global and regional structure is fixed, given, objective, but for social constructivists, this regional and global structure is subjective, is dynamic, is in fluid situation, keep on changing, etc. Just opposite. And here, with one example of for India's foreign policy, I will conclude. You see this Manmohan Singh's foreign policy posture of Manmohan Singh and Modi's foreign policy posture. The word was the same. The Manmohan Singh word and Modi's word, there was hardly any difference. Because the word before 2014 and word after 2014 was not different. The same word. It was a continuation. So if you go by the Kenneth Wall's structural realism, then there has to be no difference between Modi's foreign policy response and Manmohan Singh foreign policy response. But their foreign policy response has been different. So by using Kenneth Wall's logic, by using John Mersheimer's logic of structural realism, you can't explain the different kind of foreign policy behavior of Manmohan Singh government and Modi government. Here, social constructivism can solve your problem because social constructivism is the same word can be viewed, can be perceived differently by two different persons. Just one example of surgical strike. Modi conducted surgical strike not once but twice, and they say that now if Pakistan is indulging in the terrorist activities, immediately it will be responded and the military strike will be there. So when the Uri attack happened, immediately after Uri attack, India conducted surgical strike, went inside Pakistan. So now when the surgical strike was conducted, then some people associated with the Manmohan Singh government also came out publicly. They said a surgical strike was conducted in Manmohan Singh time also. Now the point here is, when surgical strike was conducted, why the world was not told? Why the nation was not told? why it was kept as a closely guarded secret? And now when Modi has conducted surgical strikes, so now you are saying that we have also done. So the reason is that Manmohan Singh was afraid of escalation of conflict. Surgical strike happened, but they kept it closely guarded secret because they say that if they indulge in propaganda, it might lead to escalation. And India and Pakistan both being a nuclear state,